Okay, Shelly, here we are. You've got a library that's real behind you. I've got a library that's real in Stockholm.
Yeah, I like
me.
I like your library better. Nice Zoom background. This actually is my bookcase behind me, so it's not a Zoom background. I feel like I got to go get my green screen. Unbelievable.
So this is the opposite of, I guess, the world we're talking about right now, which is the world of Facebook.
Yeah.
I'm sure you have a strong opinion. We've had Carolyn on our show twice. I think if we bring her on a third time, someone's gonna think something's up.
Somebody would think something's up. Look, Facebook's a client of mine. Their clients are yours. We know Carolyn a million years. And the Stop Hate for Profit thing is a genius, way overdue campaign that's causing Facebook a lot of pain. And rightfully so. They're very big and they're leaders and they deserve to be directly in the spotlight now. But it's all social media. It's not just Facebook. But Facebook is the biggest and they certainly should be held feet to the fire on content adjacency and hate speech. But I got a really interesting note from one of my readers this week. And I got to tell you, it stopped me in my tracks because it was about the best essay I had ever read on freedom of speech, freedom of expression, and specifically what freedom of expression means in the context of the government, but also personally, right? Because the First Amendment says the government can't be the thought police. So it really doesn't have anything to do with Facebook. And freedom of expression we always think about as, well, we have the right to speak freely, which we do. And he wrote me this beautiful essay about free will. And then and how Facebook, shouldn't censor or do anything like that and why it's better not. And then I realized, wait a minute, you are under the assumption, the very false assumption that you have free will. The algorithm is tuned specifically to keep you engaged, specifically to surface content that you will interact with. And to do that, it very, very carefully understands as best it can metaphorically, because it's not human and doesn't actually understand. It scores and matches the things it thinks that will keep you absolutely glued to Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, doesn't matter what the social network is. That is the absolute opposite of free will. So the illusion that if they're not censoring hate speech, that you have free will on Facebook is absurd. It's completely absurd. It's like saying Google's a search engine. No, Google is an advertising delivery platform that uses search as the bait to get you in. So, I don't know. It's a little heavy. Maybe we'll get to something later. We should.
That's the thing. I think you're being very serious and it's getting very intense very fast. And I was hoping this week maybe we'd have like at least 20 minutes of something fun.
Fun it is.
Fun.
All right, let's just start the show. I'm Shelly Palmer.
I'm Ross Martin.
And you're watching and listening to Think About This.
You are. And the more you listen and watch,
the less you know. Ross, I got to tell you, I love you and I love the library, but you look really tired, man.
I'm a little tired and the light is a little low because I was up late last night on Instagram Live.
Yeah.
Do you want to know why? Why was I up on Instagram? Because, finally my kids stopped showing me TikTok videos, so I was able to move over to Instagram Live. Yeah, exactly. But my friend Baron Davis, who we're about to welcome on the show, went late last night with some deep tracks. I didn't know that he was like writing music. It's just a part of him I never.
No way.
I never knew.
I didn't know that either.
So he's more like you than you thought.
Oh, yes, definitely. My basketball prowess and his.
He was so last night, like he goes on Instagram Live. He didn't tell anybody. He just did it. And then everybody started finding out about it and people started showing up. And like there were amazing people. Like I think like Chris Childs, the former Knick point guard, was there. Steven Jackson, who was an incredible basketball player who I think played with Barron, but is now a social activist. On the front lines of social reckoning right now on race. They all started piling in, but then also like all these DJs started piling in and watching Barron. And he was at home and he was just sort of playing beats that he had written. And all of a sudden, all these people were like, yo, could I buy that beat off of you so I could rap over it? And he's like, yeah, $5,000 per beat. And like people started to like bid on Baron Davis beats, and I'm like, what's going on here?
It's amazing.
And this thing, I was like, I'll just say hello, and then I'll kind of like go to bed.
Yeah.
But then he was like, he saw that I was watching, and he gave me a shout out on the stream. So he's like, yo, what up, Ross Martin? And then I felt like I couldn't leave because if I left, it would have been rude.
Yep.
So we went till like 1 or 2 in the morning last night with Baron Davis like DJing. And so he's probably tired, but he's still coming. He's in the waiting room right now. You want to bring him out?
All right. 2-time NBA All-Star, Baron Davis. Let's go.
What's happening?
Baron Davis. I didn't know about that shit last night. Shelly, you know, when I saw Shelly today, when we started recording this episode, he was like, why do you look so tired? And what happened here? And I was like, well, I was like jamming in my house late night to Baron Davis spinning on Instagram Live. And it was like hot. He had like, everybody was like in there. You had Steven Jackson in there.
Yeah.
All right, wait, hold on. Should we start the show?
Sure.
Shelly, Baron, Shelly.
Hey.
What's up, Shelly? How are you, sir?
I am great. So happy to have you here. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Wait, should I switch my
Are you going to go all
background?
NBA on us now there, Ross? Oh, I see.
The team he wished he could have played for. It would have been good to have you on my Brooklyn Nets. That would have been.
I might have a chance right now. You know, people falling off.
There's nobody playing. You have to come back. Like Spencer Dinwiddie,
I'll take it.
Kyrie. Like, and you have to admit that's a good franchise. You wouldn't mind playing for them, right?
No, not at all.
Oh, I love
it. Great franchise to play for. Brooklyn
Shelly, let me tell you something about Baron Davis that most people don't know. We're the same age. I think he was born in 1973, like me.
No. No, Shelly, don't believe that.
Baron Davis can still dunk. He can still dunk.
The question is, Ross, can you? I cannot. My basketball days ended in 6th grade. I was a power forward as a 5th and 6th grader. And by the end of 6th grade, everybody who was going to be 7 feet tall was already 6 feet tall. And I was still this big. And no matter how much I liked to play, there was no version of the world in 7th grade that I was tall enough to play. And so, Baron, I am a massive basketball fan since childhood, but sadly was not genetically gifted to play the game. Okay. Just love it.
That's okay. You turned out all right. Dude,
he's on TV every day.
You still use those same basketball skills in your business.
I do.
So
right?
Okay, that's actually the perfect segue.
It is a perfect segue.
One of the best guests that we've ever had on our show, think about this, was, may he rest in peace, David Stern.
Dear friend.
And amazing guy, incredible friend, especially Shelly's friend. Yeah. And he came on the show, and I think we were talking about like his past, like his career before. And he's like, why are you guys talking about me like I'm not in the heart of my career right now? And it caused us to sort of rethink, because even at his age, and we spoke to him only 2 weeks before he passed, he was like it was like the rest of his life and career was like ahead of him. And I feel like everybody looks at Baron Davis and is like, what he achieved on the court was legendary. I mean, the shit that he did, like I could play you a highlight reel of what he accomplished. And he was like always one of the smartest players out there. He saw things that nobody could see, and incredible career. And then he goes on and like still plays basketball in Ice Cube's Big Three. But Baron is like at the beginning of his career, actually, because he's an entrepreneur and he's an investor. And so I thought it would be great to have you on this show, especially right now, given the current climate, because you are emerging as a leading voice yet again, but in a lot of other industries that you were never in before. And a lot of people are looking up to you, not just as a basketball player, but now as a businessman and a community leader.
You know, for me, I would say my whole life's journey and path has been, you know, one of looking at myself and saying, you know, I want to own myself. I want to own my ecosystem. From the time that I walked away from my agent when I was 21 years old, at that time, I was preparing to be, that year I was my own agent. And that was the year I made the All-Star game. Yeah. And, you know, for me, it was just like I wanted to step out on a limb and have, you know, control and ownership of my narrative and who I wanted to be. I felt like the people who represented me didn't understand who I wanted to be, right? And didn't understand my value and my mark and where I could land. And so, you know, because I was young and hungry and eager to do things, I stepped out into the NBA world, as myself, and, you know, kind of trusted my friends along the way to help me kind of guide and just, you know, be there, you know, to capture things and be a safety net and help them grow as well so they can learn, you know, just the business side of the NBA. And so with that, I think, you know, throughout the course of my career, it was just anything that I wanted to do as an entrepreneur, you know, I felt like, you know, it would be better for me to spend the 6% on my entrepreneurial spirit than, you know, the 6% of giving to an agent. And so that allowed me to learn a lot of things hands-on. And every time I went into, you know, a business or a sector that I wanted to go in, you know, I kind of took it as, all right, this is me going through business school, right? If you know, I left college early, I didn't have to pay for college. So now, you know, this amount of money is what I'm going to spend to get an education of what I want to do.
You're a champion on the court, and there's no denying that at all. And I think you're also a champion off the court. And part of that is the mindset that you had to allow yourself to grow that way. You practiced basketball relentlessly, but apparently you practiced business and life relentlessly too.
For me, it was just like, put in the work, right? If you really want to know something, you know, and, you know, I credit basketball because basketball, it was like, approach the business like I would being on a basketball team, right? Am I the best player on this team? You know, am I the most important player? Am I just an integral piece? Like, but what is the overall concept? What is the team? Where do I fit in? And then most importantly, what's the playbook, right? Because you can't walk into any team and just start playing and not know the plays. You're going to throw things off, right? So if you're going to be in an industry, you better study it and you better look the part and be the part and know how to answer questions, right? And, you know, what you don't know, you ask, right? That's the same thing in basketball. If I don't know a play, if I get a coverage wrong, you know, you ask the coach and they walk you through it. And so for me, you know, being an athlete, it's like learning by experience, right? So, you know, once we play, you know, after the game, do the interview, you're treated like an athlete. Then, you know, once you get off the court, it's almost like, you know, I have to negotiate for myself. I have to, you know, just make decisions constantly that are going to, one, affect my brand, but like, you know, two, also give me an opportunity to make good marketing and business decisions. So the power is in my hand, but like also all of the work, all of the decision making, right? All of the effort was in my hands too, because I didn't have like an agent or somebody like, you know, really like holding my hand that had all these great relationships. We had to go out and like make relationships.
When you started to do that, when you started to invest and to start businesses, there wasn't really like a model for doing it. There were very few models. Like I remember
there's no model.
Charles Oakley had a car wash near me. Mm-hmm. That's the only thing I knew about. And then maybe like, I don't know, a couple of baseball players were doing things in Brooklyn and Queens. But now it's like literally days ago, Mav Carter and LeBron, like,
right.
It's like
raised
now
$100 million fund.
Yeah. And by the way, like you've also raised a lot of money and you're not out there sort of bragging about it, but I know you have a pretty decent sized portfolio of ventures in Baron Davis Enterprises. Can you talk about some of the most exciting ones to you that you're looking forward to?
Yeah, pretty much all of them. I'm excited because I think for us, the idea 5 years ago was, I am a Black athlete, entrepreneur, investor, VC, right? I don't fit. Right? It's hard to raise money. It's hard to find talent. It's just hard to find the necessary resources when, your peers are popping up these things, and it's that's not going to work. And, I started to shift my focus into learning what I was learning and sharing that with other entrepreneurs, especially other Black and minority entrepreneurs, and start to invest in them and start learning from them and creating an ecosystem where we can actually kind of share our thinking. So what I thought was, use Big as a reference, the notorious B.I.G., and the B.I.G. stood for business instead of game. And I translated that to business inside the game, and learned that the business inside the game with sports is very similar to any industry, and sports connects to all industries. And so started to invest in companies like Sleeper, which is a fantasy app, which is an incredible fantasy app, think for your family or, at work or your friends. So it's more like a social gaming fantasy app, and just start thinking about minorities. We invested in Play VS, Delane Parnell is an incredible, African-American entrepreneur, right? But an incredible entrepreneur. He's my bro. He's my, you know what I mean? We connect on a level, and it's we want to be a part of, these companies that we know are going to have an opportunity to grow. We just recently invested in a platform called UNES, which is 529 fintech platform for college savings.
When you start thinking about your career on and off the court,
yeah,
and you look at the situation that we are all in right now, where finally, we're getting a real conversation across America about all of the systemic issues that have been going on for hundreds of years. And you're one of the, I'm going to say this in the wrong way, you're one of the lucky ones in that you were genetically gifted as an athlete, and that is a rare gift. And then you capitalized on that gift, and not to take one thing away from your accomplishments on the court, because I am such a fan of your basketball playing, it's crazy. But I'm actually a bigger fan of what you've done off the court than I am on the court, because you took your celebrity and your opportunity and you really worked it into something magnificent. And I'm wondering right now, with all of the conversations that are going on, if we stop talking about what's wrong and talk about what can be done, not what's right, what can be done.
Yeah.
You are a shining example of, against every set of odds. You listed them. You're Black, you're an athlete, you're a VC, you're an entrepreneur. Which one of these things don't go on the list? And the answer is half of them don't go on the list, depending on what list you're making. And yet you made that a reality. And everyone that I know, everyone I have spoken to since George Floyd, the conversation has been, what's wrong? Tell me what others can do, not what we can do, what others can do to follow in your footsteps. If they don't have your genetic gifts, but they have your mental gifts, they want it, they understand it, but they feel like they can't get it. How is it possible to move the ball down the court metaphorically?
Well, it's a great question. I think that, it kind of happens, in a top-down approach and a bottom-up approach, right? And I think that, for one, we've never really looked at, holistically from, let's say, from an American corporation perspective or let's call it a big money, right? A big money perspective. And, a lot of times when there are pledges and foundations and, things like that being made, that money is going towards, things that are inevitably like, tax write-ups, right? And so when you start looking at how money trickles down to the actual people who need it, right, it's not so much that they need your money, they need the opportunity, right, to show you what they can do so they can be a resource, to, the system. So let's take, big retail, a grocery store, right? There are mom and pop vendors, right? Or mom and pop, small businesses that have great brands and great food products, right? But like, how are they able to scale when, every 90 days they have to, their back pay just for the appliances that they need, right? But General Electric can say that, hey, we're creating this $500 million fund, and all they need is some stuff, a stove that they don't have to pay for anymore, or a kitchen that they don't have to pay for anymore to be profitable. And so when we start looking at economics, macroeconomics, microeconomics, there is no opportunity to create sustainability, right? There's no opportunity to create a graduation process, which we're actually doing for Business Inside the Game, right? Like we're building experiential workshops, right, that lead into the business inside the game of any industry, right? So now you can come in and hands-on, you can see the people who make sense, right? You can coach the people who want to be a part of it. And you can say, hey, if I'm, we're partnering with Shinola, and Shinola is a brand that stood up and said, how can we be a better citizen, right? And, if you look at their tweet, they did a report and they were one of the first brands to come out and say, we're not doing it right. We don't think we're doing it right. Maybe we're not doing it right, but we're open for a discussion. And so being a part of Big and Shinola is building this experiential workshop where we can find the vendors, we can find the entrepreneurs that could, one, increase, the awareness of what Shinola is doing, but give opportunities to these entrepreneurs, right? And these small businesses that now they can become vendors and partners and creators and agencies, right? And, you think of what Shinola is doing is like really taking ownership and leadership and, solving that problem.
Well,
right?
it's a mobility path, right? It's a path of upward mobility, because without that, you hit these brick walls. You either can't make your payments, or something's intrinsically not profitable unless you have a wider market. And so, it's very clear how that partnership is benefiting all involved. I think the guys at Shinola do an amazing job with you. So what would you say to people now who are doubly hurt by coronavirus and the pandemic? We have, this is the hardest time. You've lost your job, or you're getting furloughed, or you're just coming back with 30% or 50% capacity. And this is the time where I know you dig deep into whatever it is that made you a champion. So what is it that we can take away from a championship mindset to help some of us get through what is about the toughest time we've ever had, ever?
Yeah, I think, for me, I would say it's been a moment of self-reflection, right? It's been a moment of getting rid of the clutter, right? Or trimming the fat, right? All the things that were distracting in your life, right? It's matching, starting to align my intent and my purpose with what I'm, listening and learning and understanding and building. And I would say for the people, it's like, this is our moment, right? We have an actual moment, right, in modern history to do something and be known for doing something and creating a change that is going to last for hundreds of thousands of years if we do it right.
That's right.
Right. And so let's be motivated, right? Let's be together, right? Let's think about what we're actually looking at and say, what are we doing? Are we just going to be, metadata and images and, you know what I mean, consumer products and consumers, or what are we going to do to actually, change the narrative? And, a lot of it is, for me, it's like, here's a time to actually start to measure people on their social evaluation.
Yeah.
Baron, on the court, I think, everyone always thought of you as like one of the smartest players out there, no matter what. You were often the most talented, but even when you weren't, you were trying to like outsmart everybody out there. The thing that I loved most about your game wasn't your smarts or your athletic ability. It was your hustle. Even someone with your success still hustles. And I think that's something people need to know.
Yeah, I mean, one, and I will never stop hustling. It's just like, it's a tough road, right? Like we're out raising a fund now for Big, and, we're trying to rewrite and restructure how, entrepreneurs and minorities and, people who are underserved are invested in, right? And also taught. And it's still hard, right? It's still hard because, it's like you still have to put together the pieces and get out there, and so the hustle never stops. When you get the money, it's not like, we haven't had money before because, we play basketball and the NBA has, been very good to us. So it's like, once we get the money, the hustle starts, right? And, once we start to invest in the companies and work with the companies and put them through our factory, the hustle starts because we have to hustle for them, right? And, not only that, it's like we still have to also hustle to stay connected and build the relationships needed so we can have the right opportunity and be looking at the right deals, right? And be investing in the right spaces and helping in the right spaces. So, I think for us, it's like, raising a fund now, getting funded, right? Going out, like that's the fun part, right? Life has always for me been about hustle and survival and sacrifice. And like, if I can take that from basketball and translate this into, the venture space, then I know I'm going to outwork everybody. You know what I mean? It's just learning everything that I need to learn and like, just kind of like learning the degrees of capacity, but also knowing my capacity, right? So as a point guard, it's like, all right, I know I got a big guy down there that's like got, it's Kareem, got 20,000, points. Like when I'm going to pass the ball to Kareem, that's a bucket. I want a bucket every time. I don't want anybody on the team to grit. So if I can put them in the best position, you know what I mean? And that's what we're doing with Big. If we can put these businesses and like companies in the best position, then we can get other people hustling with us, right?
That's such a key insight. That is such a key insight.
It's such good advice for people that need to hear this.
Put yourself in the best position to win. Flat out, just put yourself in the best position to win.
Absolutely.
I love it, man. Thank you so much for coming on our show.
Appreciate it.
Talk to you soon. How inspiring was he?
He really was. They blew my mind. The whole thing, put yourself in the best position to win and outwork your competition. Like, I know that's basketball talk, but I got to tell you, of all the kind of sports metaphors that translate to the real world, like, when it's 2:00 in the morning and you really want to go to sleep and for a fact your competitors aren't sleeping, that's kind of what keeps you doing it. And when you say to yourself, all right, I can't get this done myself. I need to partner the right way. I need to get some, like, that is putting yourself in the best position to win. And just, it's wonderful that you could take that. Like he said, I learned those skills in 6th grade. No, I didn't. I was playing basketball. He learned those skills as a professional, or however they teach basketball now. That went from a game to really like life lessons, I think, for a lot of people. But what a wonderful opportunity to learn some life lessons from Baron Davis. You've been listening to Think About This with Shelly Palmer and Ross Martin. You can subscribe to the audio podcast on Spotify, Apple, Google, iHeart, or wherever you like to listen to your podcasts. You can find our video episodes at thinkabouthis.tv. You can follow us on Twitter or Instagram at thinkabouthis, and you can learn more about us on the web at thinkabouthis.fm. Thanks so much for listening. If you think you know less than you did before, just wait until our next episode.